Good evening, everybody. This is Marty from Dawgs blog with tonight's podcast on February 20th, 2019. This is Wednesday night. As what's typical in this case, we can't seem to get anything done. That was exemplified again today. It's an ongoing problem. It is what it is, I guess. I don't know. It's actually an embarrassment, to be honest with you. I'm starting to hear rumblings in the hall when people walk by, comments being made and stuff about, I see you guys are still going, sarcasm and stuff like that. This case is still going on. So it's well known throughout the courthouse. That's not a happy thing to be happening. PRAVEEN SINGH still on the stand this afternoon. As you heard this morning, Percy Martinez was doing cross after we finally got the jury up. They only heard less than an hour of testimony this morning. And we got the jury up at, the judge was on the bench at 1:30 this afternoon. And she was rereading some of the questions that given to PRAVEEN SINGH by Percy Martinez early on into his cross-examination. And some of those questions were in regard to the uniforms that he had possession of, Modesto PD, the flak vest, wearing the uniform on evictions, he had his family fooled, he had his friends fooled, all kinds of things like that. I also noted too that Judge Zuniga, lately, she's kind of mumbling on the stand. She has a microphone up there. When she talks into it, we can hear her just fine. I had trouble hearing some of the things she was saying because she was kind of talking real low, and I noticed of late that she's been doing that, so I didn't hear everything that she said. But she did go through that stuff, and she wanted to know what Marlissa Ferreira's objections were from this morning. Marlissa Ferreira said from the October 28, 2013 interview, she said, oh, I don't know, maybe foundation. She really didn't know. She just makes objections sometimes to object. And a judge will say legal basis, and she'll kind of stutter around and spit something out. Kind of what's been going on lately. She does it to just disrupt the flow, but she does it on every other question. And she talked about PRAVEEN SINGH said he was working police officer. He admitted that he had said that he was a working police officer, and would show up at the real estate office in uniform. And he had made comments that he was involved in drug raids down in Merced County or something, but even though he's wearing a Modesto police officer uniform. She also said that it's unknown if people really know what a police officer looks like. Yes, she said it. So I guess she feels that if somebody sees a police officer in uniform, they're not sure what they're looking at. And she also noted that PRAVEEN SINGH's bail bonds business is at the same address as on Tully Road of the realtor's office. The bail bonds in the realtor's office apparently were the same office as what she sounded like she was saying. And she said there was problems with foundation. There's confirmation of what this person saw. Was he really wearing a uniform or something else? That she might have been confused. These are the arguments that she's been making lately. That she even said that they didn't even know if it was PRAVEEN SINGH that was on the record when he was testifying in court in the federal case. Percy Martinez argued there was a Christina Castro, apparently worked in PRAVEEN SINGH's office, and she told Frank Navarro that she thought PRAVEEN SINGH was a law enforcement officer. Navarro told her that he was never a law enforcement officer. He apparently did identify himself as law enforcement, and she said something to the effect, "Man, that's scary." He would show up at the Royal Realty office in uniform on occasion, and Percy Martinez said that they can call Christina Castro to support what the defense is saying about this law enforcement angle that Praveen Singh seems to be obsessed with. Marlissa Ferreira says there's still no foundation of Ms. Castro's statements. The defense has not even subpoenaed the witness, which is, they can subpoena her. It's not a problem. And Praveen Singh has never denied the law enforcement wearing the uniforms, or and has never denied that he wasn't law enforcement. Percy Martinez said Praveen Singh was asked if he had a uniform, and he said no. He said he didn't have a uniform. He said that was a lie. Praveen Singh told employees he was doing drug raids in the Merced area. The defense basis of what they're claiming is in the police reports written by the district attorney investigators. So they're saying that there's the DA's office is the ones that gave him this information to start with, and now they're saying they don't know if it's true. They did do an investigation into these impersonating officer stuff too. Judge Inigo said Praveen Singh has represented himself as a law enforcement, and it is on the record, and he admitted that he had a Modesto Police Department shirt on in that picture. He denies owning a full uniform. The issue is the federal information, and that is what she is not allowing. It's actually it's not just her. It can't be allowed to be used in this case. But this is the defense is saying this is not the federal case information. He's taken the fifth, so they can't go into those federal charges. There is no foundation, Judge Inigo said, of Ms. Castro beliefs of the information. Basically, she's saying she would have to be put on the stand. But apparently, based on DA investigators' reports, she did see him in uniform at Royal Realty. Jai Gohel plans using the photo that Praveen Singh is wearing in full uniform, including a duty belt. Marlissa Ferreira again says it's not relevant. It doesn't prove that he is holding himself out to anyone. She says it has no evidentiary value. Jai Gohel says that Praveen Singh has an obsession with law enforcement and tries to show that he has status as a law enforcement officer. And he has lied about his federal testimony. The MPD uniform, that's Modesto Police Department uniform, was hanging in his closet. It was a full uniform, including duty belt and a flak jacket, and he says it is relevant. Marlissa Ferreira says relevant to what? She says it is very strange. Yeah, everybody agreed with that one. But she says there's no evidence the uniform was used in any illegal activities. It doesn't go to credibility or the relationship to Frank Carson or his testimony in this case. Percy Martinez argued the photo goes to intent, just like the evidence the defense has presented. Praveen Singh has only admitted it was a police shirt. He's not admitting to wearing a whole uniform. And the investigators there was they gave a name of an investigator, and I forget who it was, but during the investigation saw a full uniform hanging in the closet. Judge Aniga says, yeah, it's strange, no doubt about it. But she said it's also relevant to show that Praveen Singh may be untruthful. Shows up in the office wearing that uniform and now has photos taken wearing that full uniform. She's allowing the photo to be used. The jury came up around 2 minutes after 2, and Praveen Singh on the stand. Mr. Singh is not too happy, and he starts to express it in different ways, as I'll tell you about here a little bit. It actually got interesting concerning Dawgs blog. Praveen Singh, Percy Martinez was still doing questioning, and Praveen Singh refused to say what was in the bag that he allegedly was received by Frank Carson from Frank Carson until after it supposedly disappeared. He said yes. He never told anybody about this murder bag, as he likes to call it now, that Frank Carson allegedly gave to him, that include schematics, diagrams of the property, stick figures that he says look like all the defendants in court, and there was some other evidence in there that disappeared after there was a takeover robbery at his business where one of his employees got shot. Okay, sorry, I got a little disrupted there, but he refused to say what was in the bag until after it supposedly disappeared. That's a takeover robbery that he had at his business on McHenry Avenue. He could not. Percy Martinez also asked him to draw a diagram to recreate the diagram that he saw in that murder bag, and he said, no, I can't do it. Percy Martinez kind of went him roundabout a way again, and he said, no, I can't do it. Judge Aniga started talking to him a little bit, and he wasn't wanting to do what the judge was asking him to do. Finally, she says, just write down what the instructions and stuff, that, what the orders were. If he remembers what the orders were, that's what it said in the bag. Again, he says he won't write them out, and he says no. He asks again. He says no. Judge Aniga talked to him again. She said, just write down what you recall. Percy Martinez gave him a blank piece of paper. He said he's now writing on the paper. And it said that, wrote something to the effect, call when done. Meet me at that place later on. Also, he says, also wrote underneath all that, he said it was something like that. So it wasn't real clear what was written on that piece of paper. He had told Steve Jacobson the papers were stolen in that robbery that occurred at the business, and that was the first time that anything had been said about that. And there was a lot of wonder why Steve Jacobson was at that business after it happened, because it was a Modesto Police Department case. Well, now everybody knows why. He said that Frank Carson never asked for the murder bag back. There was a little bit of a sidebar there. They had some things to talk about. It seemed to be a day for it. And he asked him, Percy Martinez asked him, do you hope that your testimony will be giving you a benefit? Giving you a benefit? He said, no. No, he doesn't want a benefit for his testimony. He was asked about his June 6th of 2018 conversation with Marlissa Ferreira, where he asked would they try to get considerations in his criminal cases. Of course, she objected to that. And she did eventually, she told him that she would take it to the higher ups, the people in command. So again, Marlissa Ferreira, sorry, I keep getting interrupting trying to finish this recording. But Marlissa Ferreira says there's no promises. He says, yeah, that's what she said. But there were possible benefits to be determined. He didn't recall that. Again, refreshes with his transcript. And he believes what she said was she's not sure if he would be getting any considerations or not. Percy Martinez went on with, when he only said, I believe in response to some of the benefits that he thought he was going to get. He did refresh, but the way it was asking, it was confusing, and the judge said it was confusing. But the what it come down to is Marlissa Ferreira did say that the powers to be will see. That's what it says in the report. He's saying no, that's not what she said. Percy Martinez said, well, would a good word from her help? And he says, no, I don't think so. Has Marlissa Ferreira ever talked to you? He says, no, she's never talked to me. Has he talked to your attorney? He says, that's attorney-client privilege. I can't tell you that. He does not know or aware if Marlissa Ferreira or anybody from the district attorney's office had talked to the feds for her or for him. At this point, there was no further questions by Percy Martinez. Jai Gohil was starting his cross-examine. Jai Gohil was asking in 2012 when Corey Kaufman went missing, or was that when he went missing? He says, yeah, he says, I believe so. And he was aware if they did a search warrant that was done on Frank Carson's property. He was aware of his involvement in the case as he was one of the suspects they were looking at. And Frank Carson had told him, according to SINGH, told him he was involved in the investigation. He said no, but that's what they're reading from the reports. Talking about 9/13 of 2012 interview with Kurt Bunch. He said that Frank Carson said the investigation involved both of them, apparently. He was concerned about being taken into custody for the homicide, and he told Kurt Bunch that Jack Abel was doing an investigation after interviewing someone in the jail. He said, yes, that's true, but not trying to solve the homicide is what he was saying. It didn't make sense. It still doesn't make sense. Told Kurt Bunch if Frank did it or was involved, he had no problems giving him up, as he had given up, quote unquote, given up his own brother before. Now, he denied saying that he'd given up his own brother. He said he didn't use that term, but that is the term that was used in the report. Um, but he wasn't exactly sure what he said. He read the transcript of the report where it was written down. That's what he said, and he said, "That's not what I said. What's in the transcript is not what I said." Um, Praveen Singh was getting a little testy on the stand too, by the way. He also told investigators he is willing to wear a wiretap and talk to Frank Carson about anything that they wanted. He said he didn't have any information on the missing person or the homicide of Corey Kaufman. He didn't say anything about having that bag or anything about where Frank Carson had said it is done, it's not a problem anymore. Um, he said he was not aware of Frank Carson being involved in the disappearance of Corey Kaufman. He said he was saying he didn't have any information. But he did say he was willing to throw Frank Carson under the bus if that's what they wanted. Kurt Bunch did tell him he could take him into custody for all the other stuff that he's involved in. And also during that interview, which was in September 13th, 2013, Kurt Bunch said he could arrest him for a lot of other stuff too that's been going on. He could arrest him for the real estate fraud, and there was about that time we took a break. The jury was sent out around 2:42 p.m. Praveen Singh was sent out. Praveen Singh, the jury was back up at 3:12. He was back on stand talking about that 9/13 of 13 interview again. And again, Kurt Bunch saying he could take him into custody for other things, and he said, "Yeah, I know that." His girlfriend could be taken in for the real estate stuff too. He said, "Yes, I know that." The armed robbery stuff that he's got presently has some charges on some solicitation for an armed robbery. He said, "Yeah, I know that." Uh, he said he didn't do any robberies. Uh, Kurt Bunch, he said, didn't want to ruin his life, but he just wants to solve this homicide case. Praveen Singh is currently being charged. This is what Jai Gohel was asking him exactly if this was true. He was charged, he was charged about 6 weeks after this interview with felony insurance code violations. Marlissa Ferrer is the DA on the case. After his interview with Kurt Bunch on 11/5 of 2013, and he denied any involvement with the disappearance of Corey Kaufman, he faced charges again about 2 weeks after that on a separate case. He didn't know. He also said he didn't know anything about the property. This was on 11/5 of 13. He told Evers and Bunch he didn't know anything about Corey Kaufman. He didn't know anything about the property. There was didn't know anything. Nothing was talked about like throwaway phones, shotguns, but did offer to use his access to Frank Carson to get information on some homicide cases, especially homicide cases for investigators. He said, yeah, he was willing to do that, but he never did. It never happened. He told the investigators Frank Carson was involved. He never really told investigators until last year Frank Carson's involvement. Yeah, and he was never asked to find someone to guard the property. Now, there was a rumor that was going around, and I mentioned this earlier, that um, Frank Carson had PRAVEEN Singh hire a guard to patrol the property, and he saw some all kinds of stuff in those containers and stuff, and that turns out to be not true. He is now charged with a felony of attempted 246 BC, which is a shooting into an occupied dwelling that is still pending. Is currently still pending. Um, there's another felony, um, actually two or three solicitations of robberies and other things that are pending. Some of the cases have been consolidated, and I believe the next date is like November of 2019, but I couldn't hear things real well because Jai Gohel's standing at the podium and he's not using a microphone. So he was charged with 4 felonies in 2013. He's got 5 felony counts of it's WNI, Welfare and Institution Codes is one of them. Defrauding Medi-Cal, false claims to a welfare agency. He's not sure, did not recall when he was noticed to testify. He's got the all the felonies in his federal case, in which they can't talk much about. Jai Gohil asked him if he was testifying under penalty of perjury today, and he also has a perjury charge too pending. For it was a signing of a document or something. A grand theft case, which probably stems out of some of the real estate stuff. I don't really know. All cases are still pending. In June of 2015, he asked him if he was charged in a 14-count indictment in U.S. District Court in Fresno. He says yes, he was. He was indicted on conspiracy to commit mail and bank frauds, both felonies. The Title 18, which is mail fraud, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 counts of mail fraud and bank fraud. Also making false statements to a bank for financing or whatever it is. There's 4 counts of that. 10 of the 14 counts are felonies. Some of them, I believe, have been dropped. But there's like, out of the 14 original counts, there's 10 that are still pending. There's 9 felonies in 3 cases. 10 felony in the federal case. So right now he's looking at 19 felonies total in all his cases. He asked if Marlissa Ferrer and Kurt Bunch had tried to contact the U.S. Attorney's Office in his behalf. There was an objection, sidebar. And it was just the way he had asked the questions, and they get kind of petty about the way questions are asked. But so he changed it to someone contacted the U.S. Attorney's Office, try to reach a deal for him or something. He says he's not aware. They have not made any offers, either one, either the local Marlissa Ferrer, who's handling her cases here, his cases here, or the feds. He was asked if if he ever worked for Billy Dishman. He said, no, I never worked for Billy Dishman. But he did work for Spy for You investigative business, a private investigator business. He said yes. Well, that was owned by Billy Dishman. But I guess that's different than working for him just because it's owned by him. The other day, when he testified, Jig asked him if he worked for 3 years under the license of Billy Dishman. And he said yes, and he had known Billy Dishman for some time. He had always told Dishman that he was a reserve in Fresno. He said no, he never told him that. And apparently Dishman is a former law enforcement officer, so maybe he was having some reservations about that one. I don't know. He was asked if he had a Modesto Police Department uniform in his closet at home in 2013. He said yes. He's had it since 2001. It's a Class A uniform. And he had told Dishman that his Fresno badge number was number 271. He said no, he never said that. He testified on direct that Frank Carson was arrested in 2015, and he was following the case by reading Modesto Bee in the local media, including Dawgs blog. During the preliminary hearing and the trial, he was following Dawgs blog, and he blurted out at this time too, he's also heard all the threats that have been made to him by Dawgs blog. I have no idea what he's talking about, but it sounds like a whiny, just something that he was whining about. To my knowledge, there's been no threats to him on Dawgs blog, nor would I allow there to be. If there was something, somebody needs to bring it to my attention, and I'll deal with it. He's asked if he read the Ramey warrant. He said yes. He glanced at it. He was told at one time he was going to be arrested in this case. The Ramey warrant was online. The Ramey warrant's on Dawgs blog, as many other places. It was on the Sheriff's Department for a long time. It was on the court index for a long time. He said he read the Ramey warrant, and then he changed that to, well, I kind of glanced at it. And he knew that Frank Carson, of course, was charged. And that was about where we were at. We broke. He was asked, I'm sorry, one more thing, if he was remembered any information from that Ramey warrant. He said no. He didn't really remember too much about it. So the jury was out at 15:57, which is almost 4 o'clock. The judge sent him out. We went home for the day. He'll be back on the stand and continued cross by Jai Gohel, and then Hans Jorkson will do cross on him. And so where it's at. I also note too that while he was walking out of the courtroom, PRAVEEN SINGH gave myself a very nasty look. He was mad dogging me a little bit. That's okay. He's got a right to feel how he feels, and it is what it is. So it's meaningless to me. So that's where we're at. Don't forget, I have PayPal buttons on the bottom of each report. You can donate. I'm just trying to pay the bills here. The sponsor, Merced Tile Supply, got a lot of good stuff going on over there. They're getting in new products all the time. You need to go over there and check it out. It's on Highway 59. Check out the the video on my site for where the location is and stuff. It's a good guy, knows what he's talking about. Got good stuff over there. So that's about it. We're not getting a lot of people in court. I'd like to see more. People really need to see what's going on with some of this stuff. It can be entertaining at times. It can be very frustrating at times. So as I always say, don't take my word for it. Come to court and find out for yourself. Good night, everybody.